Yo, congrats to Andrew Buse. I think that's how you pronounce your last name. You won. You won the signed J. Scott Campbell Spider-Man variant. We're going to send that out to you for free. Thanks for being a part of our SMS text message group.
Weekly giveaways are back. And if you want to win this Cobra Commander foil 1 in 100 John Boy Myers variant, join the SMS group, link in the description. Let's talk about the most trending comics of 2024.
Year's already over. By the time you're watching this, it's probably 2025 now. Welcome to the future.
These are the most successful, highest selling, and in-demand comics of 2024. Number 10 on the list, Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider, issue number 1, the Jenny Frisen 1 in 100 variant. Last GPA 9.8 sale, $175. And Jenny Frisen was all over the place as it pertains to trending and hot lists all year long. One of the top variant cover artists of our generation.
If we're talking about best cover artists in the industry, it is no surprise to see Jenny Frisen here on the list. She's one of my favorite artists in comics, and the community agrees because she's kind of all over these kind of Key Collector wrap-up lists that are on the app right now. If you go check that out over on Key Collector, you can see that Briar number 5, the 1 in 10 Virgin variant, X Factor number 5, the 1 in 100 Virgin variant featuring Polaris, and then just a couple weeks ago, the Dazzler number 4, 1 in 50 Virgin variant, obviously featuring Dazzler on there. Those are all in demand as well.
Over on Whatnot, we tend to offer a variety of products. One of the things that we try to be diligent about is getting new comics to our community every single week, trying to push, people reading comics, not just collecting them. Jenny Frisen, every single week.
Sorry.
20 copies, 30 copies we're ordering because we have to.
I like
we have
her.
Such a strong demand from our community to not just collect, but also to read the comics that she does any work on. I will encourage everybody to be taking a look at Hello Darkness over at Boom Studios. Horror, and there are so many Jenny Frisen covers that we're just going to show a bunch of them all throughout this bit because they get progressively more horrific over time. Some Peach Momoko vibes, Like people love Peach for how much beauty in the watercolors, etc. But you get the best out of Peach when she's doing what she loves best, which is horror. And I'm starting to feel like that may be the same situation with Jenny Frisen.
Yeah. On top of that, you got to check out Hello Darkness, too. It's a great book. It's really freaky, and there's a hidden Something is Killing the Children short story in there, too.
Number 9 on the list. Have you hit the subscribe button yet? We've been making this video every single week for over 6 years straight without ever skipping a week. That is impressive, Ryan.
Even if the list is late.
That's right. And we have Spawn 350, which is a 1 per store thank you variant. This is a book that stores just got from McFarlane Toys, from Todd McFarlane, and they all came signed. And this is very intriguing, right? Because this happened at just the wrong time of year. So when the book showed up already signed, no one graded it because they didn't want a green label, because that's what you would get if it's not verified. Until just a few months later when CGC updated their services and now does JSA authentication. They don't need to witness the signature happening in order to get a non-green label. And now that people can get this authenticated, they then sent this book in mass. Last GPA sale, $482 for a CGC 9.8. Great looking book. Awesome signature, of course. But McFarlane had an amazing 2024.
That's true. I'm kind of getting sick of talking about the man. It feels like we're talking about him every single week on these lists between Incredible Hulk 340, Amazing Spider-Man 300, Batman, with the big cape. Is that
423?
423. I was just about to say that. Thank you. He's just something about Todd McFarlane is growing on me as somebody who is not drawn to the 90s era of comics specifically. The more I see his artwork, especially on these covers and these standalone pieces, I can see why. I can see why people like him. I can see why he's so successful. And this book really did blow the doors down earlier this year.
Now, number 8 on the list is one of those books that I have to go back and read because I just completely missed it. But I think I'm not the only one. Let me know in the comment section if you're in the same boat as I am, because Grommets number 1 came out. Not a lot of people purchased it, read it, and then went back, started paying way more money. We're talking $18 average sales. The last GPA sale on a 9.8 was $77. That happened in December. All of a sudden, I look back, and there are 5 printings of this book now.
Sure, it's a skateboard book, and that's why I scrolled right past it in previews when I was doing my pre-orders, and I missed out. I missed out on a lot of really good books doing that, and it seems like the community did too, because like Tom mentioned, this book went up to 5 printings, which is kind of rare for especially something that's not like an IP, like Transformers or G.I. Joe or something like that like we see from Image lately. It's kind of impressive.
Written by Rick Remender and Brian Posehn. This is one of those books that happens every year. Not enough people ordered it at the jump. and then over time, courtesy of the collectors community as well, uplifting it, then gets the kind of love that it deserved, long overdue. It's doing so well that they've made skateboard decks that you can pre-order in previews right now. There are 3 different like actual skateboards kind of paying tribute to this comic book because it's becoming so beloved.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. You don't see a lot of that in comic books especially. And according to the information we have, final order cutoff for the skateboard decks for Grommets is February 17th. So let your LCS know.
If you're looking to support the show, if you enjoy the videos we make for you here, Instagram, etc., the way that we fund it all is through our mystery mail call. Rather than doing a Patreon or any type of like funding type of situation, we've always gone the route of we'll just get you the best comic books we can every single month.
We got comics, damn it.
Go to comictom.com. We pack a box every single month with 4 to 5 comics, a couple guaranteed exclusives. And this month, everybody gets a John Boy Myers Magic #1 in their box. That's how we're kicking off 2025. The box gets sent out mid-January, but we are in open enrollment right now. Support the show. I want to send you comic books is what I'm saying. And number 7 on the list is Power Fantasy #1.
Power Fantasy #1 from Image Comics, written by Kieran Gillen with really good art on the inside by Casper Wingard. This book came out relatively recently. I think it's on issue 3 or 4. It's on my pull list. I like it. I like it quite a lot, actually. There's only 6 slabs on the census, and the only sale we have was for $75. It sold once for $75 this month and once for $75 last month. People are kind of holding on to this book. It's still going on. I believe it's a miniseries. It's a book about superpowered people in the real world and what that would be like if we actually lived in a world with people with superpowers. What a cool idea for a book, Tom.
This definitely has some Watchmen vibes, very politically focused and more gripping, kind of a slow burn, but extremely intriguing. I can't help but think that this is like one of the only genres seemingly similar to Watchmen that came out this last year.
I'm thinking of a few similar-ish books. I'm thinking of Local Man from our friend Tony Fleece. That's kind of like Watchmen from the 90s heroes instead of the 80s heroes. You got books like 20th Century Men from Denis Camp that came out last year. That was kind of Watchmen-ish. Might have been 2 years ago at this point. But yeah, Power Fantasy, I don't want to lean too hard on the Watchmen angle of everything, but basically what happens in the world if you got like 6 people who have powers, but their powers are like nuclear level powers, and what that does to the balance of the world and how that would actually play out in a real world scenario. It's interesting. It's going to make a really cool collected read when it's all done.
Have you read any of the books that we have talked about yet? Please let me know in the comment section below. We move on to number 6 on the list with DC All-In Special issue #1, $15 average sales. Now, this isn't necessarily like an ongoing title. This is the start of the Absolute Universe, featuring the first appearance of Absolute Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman. And really, the Absolute Universe is one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing in 2024 coming out of DC, but on all of comic books. And if we didn't just have this book take this placeholder where we have an opportunity to talk about how great Wonder Woman and Superman both were, both of those titles would make up numbers on this list, and then we'd have to clear out some other books. So I'm going to kind of cheat here and put this book here just so we can talk about how outstanding Superman and Wonder Woman both are.
Yeah, we've got 3 Absolute Universe titles so far. All 3 of them have been smash, stellar, standout success hits. You're right. This list would kind of get a little redundant and boring if we just spent it talking about how cool the Absolute Universe is over at DC. I also want to shout out the other side of this book because it is a flip book. Once you get to the staples in the middle, you got to turn it around and start over from the back cover. It's pretty cool. Over in the mainstream DC universe, so many different titles and books are getting new jumping on points, new creative teams. So like whether or not you start with the absolute stuff, which is square one, or if you want to give like a book like Green Arrow, for example, a shot. Like I gave that a shot. Turns out it's really, really good. The new run by Chris Condon, I'm loving that a lot, for example. Stuff like Batman, Green Lantern, all this stuff has really good jumping on points. So if you've ever wanted to try DC Comics, now is the time.
We got Jeremy Adams on Aquaman coming pretty soon. We got a chance to talk to him a little bit at the last convention, so I'm very hyped about that. But then also we have Tom Taylor going from his like major success on Nightwing, one of my favorite superhero reads of the last few years, over on Detective Comics, well-deserved, and then taking it back to just specifically Absolute Superman and Wonder Woman. It's an amazing fresh start, specifically, I think, targeted to people who otherwise wouldn't read these particular titles. Number 5 on the list is X-Men 97, issue #1. This is the prequel to the animation show. Is this the best show of 2024? Let's kind of take a step back here real quick. We had Penguin, which is probably one of the best superhero anythings that's come out in the last few years. Grounded, gritty, mature. We also have Creature Commandos actively coming out, which I've said is my favorite show I'm watching weekly right now as it pertains to superhero shows. We had Superman and Lois wrap up this year as well, which was way underrated. The whole Doomsday arc was fantastic. And then we had X-Men 97. And I don't think there's anything that was quite as gripping and culture-shaking.
Agatha.
Ooh, Agatha was fantastic too.
You forgot Agatha, man.
No, I can't forget about Agatha.
I'm teasing a little bit. But
No, dude, Agatha was fantastic too. I said fantastic, but it was really good.
X-Men 97, however, I think there's a little bit of recency bias going on all these top 10, best comic book show of the year lists that I'm seeing all over the place. And Penguin is really good, and I love Penguin to death. It's Sopranos in DC, so how could I not love it? But X-Men 97, I feel like we're forgetting the feelings we all felt earlier this year, week after week after week.
Yeah.
Watching this show, getting thrown back into this world for the first time in 30 years, and like the tone difference in season, 3 of this show, X-Men 97, versus the actual 90s cartoons, which I went back and watched a bunch of them after 97, and it's night and day. I gotta calm down. This show changed so much earlier this year. Pre-Deadpool Wolverine, this was like our first taste of like mutants and Wolverine this year.
Seeing adamantium removed, stripped from Wolverine's bones, courtesy of Magneto, the death of Gambit, I still think of often. And so many books that were spiking all along the side of that TV series was unlike anything we've really seen in comic collecting over the last couple years, and it was an animated show. And this prequel still sells aggressively. Last GPA 9.8 sale of $75, but this has been like a $15, $20 book all year long. And let's not also forget that the very first like major Marvel Whatnot team up was creating a mystery pack that is clearly changing the landscape as we move into 2025 as it pertains to Marvel collectible comic books, consisted at the start with X-Men 97 issue number 1, this very issue.
We usually breeze right past this part of our videos, but Key Collector Comics, that's the app where we source all these books from, all this information from. We want to give him a shout out, man. Nick Colonnay is over at Key Collector Comics, man. We love you. Thanks for helping us out with these lists for all these years, and especially this one.
Yeah, Nick Colonnay is a dear friend of mine. One of my best friends in this industry. I've been working with him for years now. It's crazy how much time has flown by. He is the hardest working man in the comic collecting community. There is nobody that is as obsessive, as attentive, and cares as much about this community as much as this human being does. He focuses every day that he has on comics and making sure that the information he provides is valuable and things that not only we can make videos on, but useful to the community at large so that they can price their comics, stay up on news, as well as just enjoy this hobby and community. Big thank you to Nick Colonnese. Use code Tom101 to get a free 2-week subscription of the app. Support the show, but enhance your comic collecting. It's how we make these videos. And shout out to my brother Nick.
Let's move on. Let's get back to the list. Number 4, Doom. Number 1, the one-shot that came out earlier this year, written by possibly my favorite writer of the year, Jonathan Hickman, with really good art on the inside by Sanford Green. This was, again, there's a one-shot, came out at the start of this year, and it blew everybody's mind.
But here's the thing. Doom spiking not because of Robert Downey Jr. Unheard of. $35 average sales right now. Last GPA sale for a 9, it was $64. The book has dropped a little bit. This became hot because, one, the Sanford Green cover is outstanding. And as it pertains to like really powerful Doom covers, this one just instantly became one to grab on an issue number 1. No surprise. But the first page had the MF Doom quote that then just crossed this over to the mainstream, got even more hype on the title, and ended up selling really well. And then we got the Robert Downey news, retroactively making this a just very hunted for comic book on walls at conventions all year long. Like every show I saw this cover.
I don't think anybody predicted just how much of an impact that one quote at the beginning would have on this collectible. Like it really, like I doubted it. I remember the first time we talked about this book when I made the list, I was like, I don't even think it's just a cool book. It's Jonathan Hickman. It's Dr. Doom. And you and Russ were both like, no, it's that quote at the beginning. That's why people want this book. And I was like, I'm old. I don't know music. I'm dumb. And you guys, you figured this out way before me. Congratulations.
Well, I don't blame you because you know comics. You know Fantastic Four. We've literally read a lot of the Silver Age Fantastic Four, the stuff that's kind of hard to get through until you get to the Kirby, like, cosmic stuff. But is it even controversial to say that MF Doom was probably the most influential person as it pertains to, like, taking Dr. Doom to the mainstream outside of, like, the horrendous movies that have come out?
You were going to say, is the most influential rapper to rap with a Dr. Doom mask on.
That too, Ryan.
They both could be true. You know, I have zero input. I've never heard a single sound, a moment of his music, so I can't say, which is why all of this went over my head earlier this year. Music or no music, this is still a really cool book.
There's also 1 in 25 Virgin variant of this issue. And by the end of the year, the Marvel Whatnot team-up would include an additional mystery pack that they would release at New York City Comic Con. And the books that they included in this mystery pack were the hottest selling Marvel titles of the year that included this Doom #1, as well as the next number on the list. Number 3, Ultimate Spider-Man issue #1. $70 average sales. Last GPA sale for a first printing was $143. That is insane. On a comic book that people could have picked up for what, $5?
Not even a year old at this point. It's almost a year old. It came out in like early January, mid-January, right around Crashdown, which is not on our list, by the way. You're welcome. Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is my favorite book of the year. Like I loved this book.
I enjoyed this book
every single
so
panel,
much.
all the way through.
Right out the gate, man, every page. I'm like, oh, this is the same. It's the closest feeling I had to experiencing Ultimate Spider-Man, Brian Michael Bendis from back in the day, right?
And then you go, unfortunately, that is one of my favorite runs of all time. It's one of the only runs I'm working on collecting. Every single issue of the original Bendis Ultimate Spider-Man, but it has not aged well. It is very much a year 2000 time capsule, and it's dated, to say the least. It's really good. It's worth a read.
It's why this book is perfect timing right now to come out.
But you need to give this new run of Ultimate Spider-Man every ounce of your attention because it deserves it.
So you said Ultimate Spider-Man would be on your list. Why don't you give me your top 3 books of the year? Like what would be on that list, Ryan?
I want to find a way to make actual content out of this at some point, some other time. So we'll get into that eventually, maybe in depth more later on. But to tease, I want to say my third place book of the year had to be Somna from Distillery. I want to force you to read that book, if nothing else, because it's amazing. A little sexy, too. We should read it together, holding hands. Number 2, Crocodile Black from Boom Studios. Philip Kennedy Johnson, one of my favorite books of the year, because I put it at number 2. And then number 1 here, of course, I got Ultimate Spider-Man.
Which brings us to number 2 on the list with one of the most, I would say, surprising shakeups by the end of the year to hit the collectors community as it pertains to collectability in what was being outputted by the title, the IP, but then also the artist in general. We got to give it to Mark Spears here. This right here, Mark Spears' Monsters #1, came out the gate very strong, but man, under-ordered, which then positioned it to be one of the hottest titles of 2024. This book came out Halloween, and then within a couple weeks spiked up to numbers that we saw no other comic book hit. And I think it has to do with the fact that he's focused on Universal Monsters, right? And Universal Monsters is largely coming out by a different publishing company. Because of that, there is a control over how these comics are produced, what styles of covers can come out. And the creative teams are going to decide what kind of homages they're going to allow on covers, what they want to see focused on covers. Well, that happened over at another publishing company. And then Mark Spears said, all right, well, that's happening over there. Over here, we're just going to go wild with it. And they did a ton of homages. They did anything they can think of. They kind of let the creativity flow through these covers and then capitalizing on the much needed cover art that the community clearly wanted. Because you got the Batman 423, you got Jaws homage, you have Lady Frankenstein at a time where there isn't really Lady Frankenstein covers coming out. Wow, Creature Commandos is on the damn screen. Like striking while the iron's hot within his own IP. Like, brilliant.
And he first popped onto my radar earlier this year with the B cover. I'll put it on screen right now because it's that good. The B cover for Green Lantern War Journal issue #12 from Philip Kennedy Johnson, who I mentioned earlier. This cover blew my mind, and I was like, I need to look up who this is. It says right there on the barcode, thankfully, cover art by Mark Spears, and that just kind of planted the seed in my head way back in August. And now seeing, he's doing a lot of DC books too, also. So if you can't get these Monsters books, or if you missed the boat and your store didn't order any, whatever, there's probably a better chance if you've been able to get some of these DC B covers that he's been working on all throughout the latter half of this year, at least.
Last sale was also a record high. CGC 9.8 hit $270. We also got to give a big shout out to Dynamite Comics, who's been utilizing Mark Spears on multiple covers as of late. And their Thundercats run has been superb. And as someone who has never really gotten into Thundercats, I'm over here signing up to their Kickstarter, their backer kit, to get the full omnibus of their first issues coming out. I'm picking up the Mark Spears covers that he's doing through Dynamite. And then not only that, Thundercats, Transformers, G.I. Joe. These are titles that I just have never been a fan of because I just never watched the shows. And this year, I'm over here at the shop picking up the latest G.I. Joe comic courtesy of Joshua Williamson. Like, these IPs are being handled so well by publishers in 2024 that I'm now like getting into stuff that I probably should have gotten into a long time ago.
It's going to be a good 2025, too. That's all I'm going to say. If this is where we're at now, I think we got some great stuff lined up ahead of us next year.
I'm going to hit you with my top 3 picks of 2024 by the end of this list, so stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button, slap the like button, do it for Comic Butch, if not for us. And let's talk about the #1 most trending book of 2024. And we got to give it to Absolute Batman issue #1. He just got done saying that 2025 is looking like a great year. And a big part of that has got to be what's coming out at DC Comics. The Absolute Universe took the world by storm. Dare I say, kind of put the pedal to the metal faster than Marvel's doing with the Ultimate Universe, which is also incredible.
I have to give the edge to the Ultimate Universe personally, which is weird because I love DC a lot more than Marvel.
Black Panther is epic. What Peach Momoko is doing on X-Men, some of the most underrated things, like how more people aren't reading X-Men right now, specifically by Peach Momoko, is astonishing to me.
Correct. And between the Ultimate Universe and the Absolute Universe and all the stuff that's coming out from both of those titles in the next few months, I think 2025 is going to be a fantastic year for comics, as heralded by the arrival of Absolute Batman #1 earlier this year, with all the weird changes we've been getting to not only Batman, but like Tom mentioned earlier, Superman and Wonder Woman in the titles all throughout the Absolute Universe. It's like the heroes you know, but something's off.
That's right. Bruce Wayne isn't wealthy. He didn't grow up with a butler. In fact, Alfred is hunting him down in this comic book. And when this came out, there was so many people that were kind of surprised, and I wasn't surprised. You know, because you go back to New 52, Scott Snyder, one of the best Batman stories of all time. Him coming back to the Batman title was much needed, similar to like James Gunn doing what he's doing at DCU.
The last GPA sale for this book and a 9.8 was $116 earlier this month, which is a little bit above average. And we know comics can be expensive. They can be daunting, especially as a comic reader. If you're trying to find a new book to get into, you can do a whole lot worse than just picking any of these Absolute titles and grabbing #1. The trade paperbacks for these Absolute books are probably going to be coming out in the next month or two anyway. So if you missed the boat, read all of them, like all 3 of them. They're like legit, all 3 titles: Wonder Woman, Superman, Absolute Batman. All 3 of those have been phenomenal so far.
Top 3 picks of the year for me is always kind of tough to decide because typically by the end of the arc, that changes for me. I kind of have to remind myself of the feeling it gave me during that one experience of escapism that comics provide. Absolute Superman right now is the book that I'm most excited to read the next issue of. And I have never said that about a Superman book. You know, issue 2 of Absolute Superman needs to be read by every single person watching this show. The relationship between Clark and Lois and how different it is, but how gripping and interesting it is. It just, you get locked in. You know you're not getting something traditional, and that's why I love it so much. I gotta also give it up to Ultimate X-Men, Peach Momoko, because Marvel's letting her make a horror X-Men comic.
It's very different, too. It is such a slow burn. Like, there's no... we're 10 or so issues in at this point, and there's still no team. There's, like, no X-Men team. There's no Xavier mention. There's no, like... At least with Spider-Man and with Black Panther, you can kind of spot some stuff you recognize from the main Marvel universe.
Right.
But Ultimate X-Men is, like, so wild and different and out there, and that's why it also made my top 10. It wasn't my top 3, but it did make my top 10 as well.
The last book I got to mention, maybe a surprise to some people. The enjoyment I got out of reading Aliens versus Avengers #1 was unlike any book I experienced this year.
Jonathan Hickman.
It's brilliant.
We already talked about him twice on this list. He wrote Doom and Ultimate Spider-Man and Aliens vs. Avengers. And he's my favorite writer this year for a reason. Aliens vs. Avengers was nuts.
I had to read the comic twice, immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Like
it's a big comic, too.
It's a big comic,
Yeah.
and it is exactly what we needed that you didn't know you needed. Like, what if the world had xenomorphs and just started killing all the superheroes because they have an advantage? As soon as a face hugger touches your face, you're toast, which then just curves the power structure.
Don't spoil it. Don't
You
spoil it,
gotta
man.
read Aliens versus Avengers. And of course, as always,
You got to keep responsibly.
enough said.